Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the war on women's sport has made it to Britain with the maddening and disastrous push for trans cyclist Emily Bridges to compete alongside biological women. With industry figures reportedly too terrified to speak on the issue of trans athletes, are we witnessing the silent death of fair competition in sport? I'll explore that in my digest before I get the thoughts of tonight's superstar panel. They're the revered political journalist John Sargent, the activist and entrepreneur Adam Brooks, and royal and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. And as Starmer and Sunak can't define what a woman is, can any politician who refuses to recognise basic biology be trusted by the voters? Well, columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle, he's going to tackle that in Uncancelled at 10:40. Will justice be served over the horrific treatment of care home residents and their loved ones during the pandemic?
An incredible use of police time to take my 97-year-old grandmother back into a care home where she is deteriorating, where we haven't been able to see her for 9 months. Nan, I love you and we are going to fight for you.
Horrifying. Leandra Ashton, the ex-Coronation Street actress whose attempts to liberate her gran, who we just saw her there, ended in arrest, gives evidence to my lockdown inquiry in her first interview since launching a new care home watchdog. Finally, after their hypocrisy was laid bare following Will Smith's assault on comedian Chris Rock at the Oscars, there's a backlash growing against the deplorables of Hollywood.
I was sickened by the standing ovation. You do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
If those are the types of people that are opposing us on parents' rights, I wear that like a badge of honor.
Jim Carrey and Ron DeSantis, potentially the next president there. And at 9:30, I'll ask US broadcasting superstar Megyn Kelly how on earth the Be Kind showbiz set can ever claim moral superiority again as she makes her big return to the show. After revelations of royal fury over his prominence at yesterday's memorial to Prince Philip, should the Queen be forced to publicly disown her favourite son, Prince Andrew? We'll debate that and get your verdict in the clash at 9:20. I know this is divided opinion today. Dan at gbnews.uk, at gbnews on social media, and posted my poll there too. Has Britain fallen out of love with the NHS? Brendan O'Neill gives his take in The Outsider at 9:45. And does Patrick Vallance have any grounds for threatening the return of nightmarish COVID restrictions? We'll debate at 10 p.m. Plus, is the push to make Britain a cashless society ethical? Should we be wary of giving up coins and notes? Is there a nefarious reason behind the move to cashless? That's coming up in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Don't forget, you'll also get your first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages throughout the show. And at 9, just before the end of the show too, I'll crown another Greatest Britain and Union jackass on a day marked by immense bravery and tragic goodbyes. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Scheming Nicola Sturgeon has once again proven herself to be the ultimate COVID hypocrite. Yesterday, the Scottish First Minister attended the memorial service for Prince Philip at a packed Westminster Abbey with her beautiful face on full display to the world as she sat glumly next to her equally unmasked husband and behind Boris Johnson. But that's the same Sturgeon who insisted all Scots must remain muzzled any time they are in a church prior to a conveniently timed announcement today. Yep, that's right. After being completely shamed by social media, Sturgeon confirmed it will no longer be a legal requirement to wear a face covering in some settings, including places of worship from the 4th of April. Too little too late, though. I mean, yesterday, was she saying that it's safe to be unmuzzled in an English church and not a Scottish one? Or was this just more proof that all her pointless rules have been meaningless COVID theatre? As today's superstar panellist Adam Brooks tweeted, again, if Sturgeon thought masks work, she'd be wearing one at Westminster Abbey today. The rules she has still in place in Scotland would mean she had to wear one. These utter charlatans and hypocrites will never again tell me what to put on my face. Hear, hear. And Adam Brooks will be here shortly, alongside the great John Sargent and Daisy McAndrew tonight. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story this evening, a damning report has found catastrophic errors at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, saying 201 babies and 9 mothers could have survived if they'd received better care. The independent inquiry looked at more than 1,500 clinical instances and revealed repeated failures over a 20-year period. A number of babies suffered skull fractures and were left brain damage, and several mothers were refused caesarean sections. The report highlighted a culture at the Trust which meant some midwives were too frightened to involve consultants. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said the failures have no place in the NHS.
To all the families that have suffered so greatly, I am sorry. The report clearly shows that you were failed by a service that was there to help you and your loved ones to bring life into this world. We will make the changes that the report says are needed at both a local and national level.
Sajid Javid. Well, Sonia Lee, whose baby daughter died in 2000 shortly after she was born, says she's waited too long for an apology.
All I ever wanted was somebody to say, I am sorry, I made the mistake, and I will retrain and I will learn from my mistakes, and I never want this to happen again.
Sonia Lee. Well, in other news today, the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, says he'll appeal a parole board decision to release the mother of baby P from prison. Tracy Connolly was jailed in 2009 for causing or allowing the death of her 17-month-old son Peter at her home in London. He'd suffered more than 50 injuries despite being on the at-risk register. The parole board cited Connolly's progress while in custody and time on licence as reasons for their decision. British ports will be given legal powers to refuse entry to ferry operators that don't pay the minimum wage. The Transport Secretary has laid out a package of measures in response to P&O Ferries' decision to sack 800 staff. Grant Shapps says his request to prevent entry to ferry services that don't pay fairly will be in force until the government makes it a legal requirement. The top United Nations human rights official has said Russia may have committed war crimes in Ukraine, and they urged Vladimir Putin to withdraw his troops from the country. Michelle Bachelet said at least 77 medical facilities have been destroyed in Ukraine, including 50 hospitals. Meanwhile, Russia's defence ministry says its forces were regrouping near Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, and around the northern city of Chernihiv in order to focus on occupied territories in the east. But Russian attacks in both locations continue today, according to military sources. Entertainment news, and the Hollywood actor Bruce Willis is going to be stepping away from his career after being diagnosed with aphasia. In an Instagram post, his daughter confirmed the condition is impacting his cognitive abilities, and as such, he has decided to retire. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Women's sport is under threat in Britain, and if we're not careful, its very existence could soon be erased. The left wing, the woke, the politically correct and the Labour Party don't want to talk about this worrying trend because they've decided trans rights trumps the rights of those born biologically female when it comes to sport. But as a great lover and proponent of women's sport, I will and we all must before it's too late. What we've learned this week is that the suggestion the disturbing cases of the US swimmer Leah Thomas and the New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard were unique and would not be repeated here in the UK. British cycling made sure of that after Emily Bridges was included on the entry list for the National Omnium Championships at the Derby Arena this weekend. Now, Emily, until the past few months, was a very successful male cyclist called Zach Bridges. In 2018, Zach became the national junior men's record holder over 25 miles by completing the course in just 47 minutes and 27 seconds. By contrast, Hayley Simmons, who holds the female senior record in the same event, completed it 2 minutes slower, in 49 minutes and 28 seconds. As recently as last month, Bridges, who we're told has been transitioning for some time, was competing in men's events. In February, Bridges competed at the British University Championships in Glasgow, where they won gold in the points race. But in one of the most maddening and consequential decisions made by a British sporting body, Bridges was permitted to compete as a woman against biological women, including the five-time Olympic champion Dame Laura Kenny. How could this possibly happen? Well, British cycling has a Stonewall-approved woke policy that says they must accept all participants in the gender they present, as long as they have testosterone below a certain level. Bridges, who could be in line to ride for Wales at the Commonwealth Games this summer and possibly even Team GB at the 2024 Paris Olympics, apparently began hormone treatment last year and was initially considered eligible. Studies have shown that doesn't reverse the development of anatomical advantages related to, among other things, height, pelvic architecture and leg bones during male puberty, not even close. But in this current world of cancel culture, where Keir Starmer and many leading Labour politicians refuse to say if a woman can have a penis, women cyclists are too terrified to speak up against this very obvious madness. A well-placed source told the Daily Mail today, everyone is afraid to say anything for fear of retribution. And Olympic swimming medalist Sharon Davies, who has been bravely campaigning on this issue for years, despite death threats, said, British cycling ought to be ashamed of themselves. I have had quite a few of the girls very distressed on the phone. They are frustrated and disappointed. Thankfully, sanity has eventually prevailed for now, but not until prominent sporting figures like Sharon and outlets like GBNews began speaking out on behalf of those cowed figures in the cycling world. Just before we went to air tonight, British Cycling confirmed Emily would no longer participate in Saturday's event after being informed she was not eligible under guidelines set out by the UCI, the world governing body for sports cycling. But in the same breath, British Cycling called for the formation of a coalition to press the issue of trans athletes, making it clear just what lengths they will go to ensure women struggle to get a fair fight. In their statement, British Cycling, well, they've jumped feet first into the culture wars, let's be honest, by saying the conversation around Emily was bigger than one race and one athlete. They waved off a wealth of science by stating that far more needs to be done collectively before any long-term conclusions can be drawn, all the while promising they would achieve fairness in a way that maintains the dignity and respect of all athletes. Do they truly mean all athletes? Because for some female competitors, that ship may have sailed with this whole saga. Now, I'm all for an equal society, as you know, and Emily should be accepted and welcomed into the world, but just not into the world of competitive women's sports, I'm afraid. I'm very clear on this, and it's not about discrimination, it's about fairness. Sporting bodies have to limit competitors to the biological sex in which they were born. Otherwise, I'm fearful women's sport, something I love and champion in my role as a supporter of the all-conquering London Pulse netball team, is on a slippery slope to oblivion. To respond now, my superstar panel. The journalist and broadcaster John Sargent, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. So, Daisy, British cycling gave in today because they were forced to.
Yes, I was going to say they didn't give in. They had their hand forced. Now, I have said for many, many years that I want trans people to be equal. You know, I very happily champion them. I feel incredibly sorry when you look at the statistics of suicides. We all know the arguments. But actually, I think that you will really struggle to find anybody who thinks that an athlete born a man should compete against a woman in either professional sport or in any other sport. And I think most people have come to that conclusion, and most people know that when you come to that conclusion, it doesn't mean you're transphobic. And actually, I feel terribly sorry for Emily, because she's been thrust into this issue. And reading her story, she, being a professional cyclist, was the only thing she, even when she was a he, ever wanted to do. Now, and I think the fact that it wasn't clear to her that she couldn't do this has put her in a really unfortunate position, if you see what I mean. And I read the essay she wrote when she came out a few years ago. It was absolutely heartbreaking. It was the typical story of a kid feeling like they were growing up in the wrong body, being very depressed, having gender dysmorphia and all of that. And now here she is. So if the rules had been made ages ago saying you can't do this if you transition, her life would have been
but they
easier.
haven't been made, and that's the problem. And Adam Brooks, it's interesting. I mean, Daisy says everyone's accepted this. I think actually we're far from everyone in power accepting this, because if you look closely into British Cycling's statement, they actually do want Emily Bridges to be able to compete, and that includes sending her to the Commonwealth Games. So there isn't universal agreement on this, far from it.
No.
I'm sorry I meant every normal person, not every person in leadership.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's the people who are making the decisions.
As of the 29th of March, the British Cycling classified Emily Bridges as a male. Look, I'm of the opinion the world's gone mad. I've got two daughters. If they become good at their sport, would I be happy with them to compete, say, in the boxing ring with someone that was born a man? No, I wouldn't. I think we've lost all sense of what's right and wrong. I think trans rights need to be respected. But could we not set up trans events, trans games? Why do women need to lose their right? To give trans rights, we shouldn't be taking it away from women. And I'm quite strong on that. And I think it's dangerous, and the fairness of women's sport is totally gone.
John Sargent, have we got this wrong? I mean, I was reading earlier today Emily Bridges' mother talking about her daughter having to potentially have police protection at the event this week. Now, of course, she's now not going to compete, but that's a pretty horrifying state of affairs, isn't it?
It certainly is, and that's the trouble. People are now so worked up about these issues, they immediately think, oh, I'm being asked to take sides. Not necessarily. In fact, the cycling organisation, the authorities, should simply be asking the question, how can we make sure that our sport is fair? Sport that isn't fair isn't sport. So it's cheating. They deal with this all the time in terms of establishing rules, working on categories, but everyone who watches sport wants to know, is it fair? If they're suddenly told, well, actually, some of them are allowed to have drugs, some of them are allowed to do this, some are allowed to do that, I'm bored with this. I don't want to watch this so-called sport. Well, now, why can't the sporting authorities, instead of finding themselves in all this exciting big picture stuff about trans rights and this and that, just concentrate on what they know about, which is how to make sure that their sport is fair. If they stick to that, they'll come to the right conclusion.
I know, but Adam, if you look at that, then the only way to be fair is to go with my policy, which is that you can only compete in the birth that you were in the sex that you were biologically born. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter what gender you say you are, you cannot reverse male puberty, and even hormone treatment does not replace male puberty. That's a fact.
Sports Council says it's unlikely to level up and be fair. But we're going to end up, in 5 years, where every world champ in the women's sport, whatever sport it is going to be a trans athlete because the advantage is so high.
That's the risk, isn't it, Daisy?
Well,
that is the risk.
But actually, I'm much more cheerful about this because I think this is a sign that common sense is prevailing. And yes, I completely agree with Adam that a few months ago or a couple of years ago, I think that's the way that the direction of travel was going. But now I think people can differentiate and say some issues of trans rights or trans arguments are not fair, but other issues are. And you don't have to be completely on one side of the argument or on the other. And I think the problem is, as we all know, any of us that's ever said anything on this issue, you get so much abuse, but you get abuse from quite a small number of people. Yeah. Those small number of people have had a very, very loud voice. And now I think the big
Well, you'll be called a TERF.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
And
I'll be called transphobic.
Look, I don't care what anyone calls me. You can call me whatever you want.
But I think that the politicians and the leaders, whether it's the leaders of the sporting associations or politicians, whether it's Ed Davey or Keir Starmer, they have been so frightened of that abuse that they've got that they've gone on saying something that's nonsensical.
Sharon Davis. One thing, I read Sharon Davis' Twitter. I used to be a swimmer myself. Big fan of hers. She's getting so much abuse.
Well, she's had death threats.
Right.
Which is despicable. Adam Brooks, Daisy McAndrew, John Sargent, my superstar panel are here all night. I do want to tell you, though, British Cycling have said they are committed to fair and meaningful competition informed by objective scientific research and driven by a desire to guarantee fairness and safety. Their transgender and non-binary participation policy is based on regulations for transgender athletes set by the UCI. And the UCI say these regulations reflect a broad medical, scientific and legal consensus and are the result of discussions and exchanges between medical experts, sport physicians, legal counsel, human rights experts and transgender representatives. Now, still to come. Have the liberal showbiz elite exposed themselves as the true deplorables of society? US media superstar Megyn Kelly joins me at 9:30. But up next in The Clash, should the Queen be forced to publicly disown her favourite son, Prince Andrew, to quell media criticism? Consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, top lawyer, Rad Seeger, and former detective and Rochdale whistleblower Maggie Oliver go at it after the break. But I want to know what you think on this. It has divided opinion today. People don't like criticism of the Queen, which I understand. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle at gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. I'll let you know the results after the break.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Rain and snow is currently clearing south across the UK, followed by cold Arctic winds and the risk of icy patches first thing Thursday. This cold front is bringing a marked change with Arctic air following south and in some places temperatures dropping more than 10 Celsius compared with a few days ago. It's also bringing a mixture of rain and hill snow, with the snow increasingly coming to lower levels across southeast England as it clears during the early hours of Thursday. Don't be surprised in the southeast, particularly if you're somewhere like the Chilterns or the Downs, to wake up to a slushy covering of snow. Won't last long though, and in the north we've already seen some snow and it will continue through the night with some icy patches first thing. A widespread frost to begin the day, temperatures well below freezing for some clearer and more sheltered parts of northern UK, and actually plenty of bright weather first thing once any remaining persistent rain and snow clears away from the far southeast. There'll be further wintry showers, sleet, snow, hail into the east of England, northern and eastern Scotland on a biting northeasterly wind, and it's going to feel cold in that wind. Temperatures at best 6 to 8 Celsius fairly widely. But there'll also be sunny spells away from the showers, particularly in the west. And a heads up, with clearing skies on Thursday evening, a really good chance actually of seeing the aurora, especially if you live in the north. But it's going to be a freezing night under those clear skies. Still some wintry showers into the east first thing Friday, further showers into the northwest as well. But away from those showers, sunshine and temperatures at or below freezing. Soon enough, though, it will warm up through Friday morning into the afternoon, temperatures reaching 8 to 9 Celsius quite widely. There'll be further showers, but not quite as many as Thursday, and it won't be quite as windy. Saturday brings with it further showers, drier for many on Sunday and a little warmer.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Megyn Kelly and Brendan O'Neill on the way, but now time for the clash. Yesterday, in front of the world's media, shameless Prince Andrew exploited his father's death and used the frail Queen to return to the public stage where he's convinced he belongs. And I wasn't even a bit surprised, to be honest, from what I know about the Duke of York. He will do anything, including risk his mother's impeccable reputation in pursuit of his aspirations of a comeback. Somewhat worryingly, my royal sources insist the Queen made the decision for Andrew to be her walker and intends for him to play the same role at other similar private events in future, although crucially not at state occasions. Now look, I respect the Queen's loyalty to family, I really do, but as I say in a column for the Mail Online today, the time has come for Prince Charles, who is in many ways already starting to implement his vision of a slimmed-down monarchy, and Prince William to play the role of enforcers when it comes to Andrew before he does the Queen any more damage. But what do you think? Should the Queen be forced to publicly disown her favourite son, Prince Andrew, to quell media criticism, or is this media criticism incredibly unfair? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk, tweet @gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. I'll bring you the results shortly, but to help you make up your mind, the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, top lawyer, Rad Seeger, and former detective and Rochdale whistleblower, Maggie Oliver. Andrew Pearce, this has been a fascinating one today because actually what I sense, and I know you agree, is that a lot of people think the Queen did absolutely the right thing by standing by her son.
Look, she's a monarch and she's a mother too, Dan. And it was her decision. It wasn't Prince Andrew bustling forward, elbowing his way back onto the centre stage. She needed someone to get her out of the car because she's so frail. Mobility issues are a big problem. She didn't want to have to use a wheelchair. And Prince Andrew is her favourite son. He had Prince Charles was going to be going in with Camilla, Prince Edward with his wife, William with Kate. If Prince Harry had just stopped sulking and whinging in the United States, he could have been in the Abbey and done the right thing by his grandmother, but he wasn't there, so it was right for Prince Andrew. But look, she's already thrown him to the wolves. He has been sacked, Dan, from public life. He's no longer able to use HRH in public. He no longer does any official engagements on behalf of the crown. You never see him. We saw him yesterday because it was a service to commemorate not just the Duke of Edinburgh, his dad. He loves his dad, and the Queen loves her son, and I suspect we'll see him again at the service in June to mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. Let's not forget, he flew helicopters on very important missions, and I think he should be there. And then he'll disappear from public view, and we won't see very much of him ever again.
Radzi, you disagree, though? You think this was a big mistake to put Prince Andrew centre stage yesterday?
Dan, I had to do a double take when I saw it yesterday. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, that he was there. This appalling man who, let's not forget, is up to his eyeballs in scandal, forgetting the Virginia Giuffre case. He's wanted for questioning in New York by senior federal prosecutors. He's lied his way through a Newsnight interview and has just compromised the Virginia Giuffre case. Look, it's up to them, but he's toxic. And if I were involved in advising this wonderful organization, which I know we all cherish, I'd be saying he has to be banished from public view until such time as he steps forward and acknowledges the wrong that he did, faces the consequences, and let's see if he can find a way back. But I was appalled and it turned me off.
Maggie, I'm really interested to know where you stand on this one because, of course, you're a mum. But more importantly, I guess, you are a champion for the victims of sexual abuse.
Yeah, hi Dan. Yeah, I am a mum. I've got 4 kids of my own, as you know, but I see there's 2 very different angles to this. You know, the Queen is a mum at the end of the day, and this is a private ceremony where it was a memorial for his father, and she wanted a son with him. On the other hand, it is our royal family, and I think actually that the decision that the Queen took to have Andrew walk her into the Abbey will be another nail in the coffin of the royal family. I think it's very misjudged. I think when you put it alongside what happened in the Caribbean and the public looking on, they will see an institution here that really feels they are above public opinion, that they are arrogant as to what the public actually feel, but that the public will never look at Prince Andrew again and not see him as having been accused of child abuse. So, you know, the decision to have him walk into the Abbey with the Queen was her decision at the end of the day. But I do think that it shows how out of touch with public opinion that the royal family are. And I really believe that as the Queen sadly will, in the not too distant future, no longer be here, I think that the royal family is really losing its grip on public opinion.
Fascinating. And Andrew, I wanted to ask you about that actually, because we both know how important optics are. Because I felt actually that Prince William and Kate got a really hard time as a result of that Caribbean tour. It was basically 2 botched photo opportunities, and all of a sudden they're in the middle of an absolute storm. But the optics of this weren't good, Andrew. And I just wonder if you think, like I do, that Prince Charles or Prince William should have had a firmer hand and said to the Queen, look, you just can't do this because of the place that we're at as a family right now.
What do they want him to do then? Sneak in the back? Hide in the back? He's a part of the family. There are 4 children. It's his father. It was right that he was there to pay respect to his father. It was a scandal, frankly, that Prince Harry wasn't there. I think that's almost the biggest scandal, actually, because he always says how much he respects the Duke of Edinburgh.
I agree.
Look, it's great optic, I admit it. But it's the Queen. She's nearly 96. The royal family will, contrary to what Maggie says, popularity goes on and on. Her popularity is as high today as it was 40, 50 years ago. This is a remarkable year for her. It's her 70th anniversary on the throne, the Platinum Jubilee. We will never have one like this again. And I guarantee to you, you will not see Prince Andrew at any of those Platinum Jubilee events. He was simply there yesterday because it was a very important occasion for his father as well as the Duke of Edinburgh. She's a monarch and she's a mum, and she wanted her son with her. And I think it's rather touching, actually.
Well, Andrew, it was interesting that you talk about the Jubilee, because certainly Prince Andrew hasn't given up on hopes that he might be involved in some way. And speaking to my royal sources today, they say that the Queen does like the idea of having Prince Andrew as her walker. That's the term that was used to me. And she is potentially considering taking him to events like Royal Ascot and the Derby, the Epsom Derby, which are, of course, events that she would attend in a way in a private capacity. But you know that won't go down well, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. I think she's no fool. She reads public opinion very well. She can read the tea leaves very well. She will see the hostile reaction to having Andrew so close to her. She may reflect on reflection, perhaps it wasn't the right decision, but it was her decision, not Prince Andrew's decision. Charles would have talked to his mother about it, but at the end of the day, she is the head of state, and I would be amazed to see Prince Andrew in a carriage with the Queen, hurtling up the turf at Ascot, if indeed we even see the Queen at that. Don't forget now, I don't think we're going to see anything like as much of the Queen in public in the next few years, because she's clearly very frail now. She looked very old and she looked very distressed. And that's another reason why I think she wanted Prince Andrew with her. She was clearly very emotional. You don't see that very often with the Queen.
No, and of course they are very close, they're next door neighbours. Brad, you actually go one step further, though, and you think the Queen should actually publicly disavow Prince Andrew?
There's no question in my mind if she wants to preserve the institution going forward. And Andrew knows how fond of him I am, but I'm going to side with Maggie on this occasion, because she, like me, spends a lot of time supporting victims. And that's where my mind went to yesterday. What message was the Queen giving out to the countless number of victims of sexual harm? And I think either you're going to tether yourself to core values, which I know the monarchy does, or not. And to have that mixed up yesterday, giving those mixed signals, only did damage to the very institution that I know that we all love and cherish. Absolutely, I would banish this man to Siberia.
Maggie, is there anything that Prince Andrew can do, in your opinion, to achieve some sort of redemption? Because it was interesting speaking to people today who know the situation. They say, and look, I know a lot of people won't have any sympathy for this, but they say he is at a very low ebb. The Queen is worried about his mental health. The term that was used is that Prince Andrew is a broken man. Do you have any sympathy for that, Maggie? And is there any advice that you would give to Prince Andrew about how he potentially can seek redemption?
I'm sorry, Dan, but for me, I haven't got an ounce of sympathy for him. Mm-hmm. My sympathy lies with the victims that he's alleged to have abused. What I would have liked to have seen would have been the Metropolitan Police investigate the allegations of the many victims who came forward. In the end, it was left to a civil case in America, from which I don't think he will ever recover. I have the greatest sympathy with the Queen, because he is her son at the end of the day. She loves him. On this occasion, I think she's put her love for her son above what the country would have liked to have seen. And I think the consequences of that will haunt her in the future. I think that the country will stay behind the Queen as long as she is alive. But my personal opinion is that the monarchy is much weaker than it was when the Queen came to the throne, and actions like this and decisions like this will only serve to weaken it further, in my opinion.
Fascinating discussion. Thank you to all of you. That was the Rochdale whistleblower, Maggie Oliver, a former detective, of course, the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearson, the top lawyer, Rad Seeger. So who do you agree with on this? Well, Josh on Twitter says, why should she do it for the public? That makes it far less sincere, surely. From Darrington, the Queen of the Realm doesn't have to pander to the woke glitterati, thankfully, so my vote is cast no. And from Brenda, a parent's love is unconditional. You might not like what they've done, but it doesn't stop you loving them, the good and the bad. And your verdict is now in, and it's pretty strong, actually. Just 17% of you agree that the Queen should be forced to publicly disown Prince Andrew. 83% of you saying she did the right thing yesterday. Thank you so much for your feedback. Coming up, with plummeting satisfaction and rising costs, has Britain started to fall out of love with the NHS? Brendan O'Neill investigates that at 9:45. But next, after the Oscars exposed Hollywood's rank hypocrisy, why would anyone listen to the Be Kind showbiz set's virtue signalling again? US media superstar Megyn Kelly returns after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Rod Little and Brendan O'Neill on the way, but it's Megyn Kelly time now, the star US journalist and host of the brilliant Megyn Kelly Show. Now, whether it's calling out insane COVID laws or taking on the woke ideologists who want to drag young children into the trans debate, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is fast winning a legion of fans across the pond. In fact, there's growing speculation he could even leapfrog Donald Trump and win the Republican nomination to run for US president in 2024. In his latest takedown of our clown society, DeSantis has torn into Hollywood's dripping hypocrisy after stars at the Oscars attacked his campaign to protect parents' rights.
If the people who held up degenerates like Harvey Weinstein up as exemplars and as heroes and as all that, if those are the types of people that are opposing us on parents' rights, I wear that like a badge of honor.
Good line. Hollywood's attack on Red Ron comes when virtue signalling A-listers willfully ignored Will Smith's physical assault on Chris Rock and indeed gave him a standing ovation during his Poor Me acceptance speech at the Oscars.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? Oh, wow. Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
I'm going to.
So, Megyn, who is America backing? The Hollywood degenerates or Ron DeSantis?
Well, I think actually Ron DeSantis would win that poll because he'll win all of the Republicans and a fair amount of the independents and the Democrats, too. I mean, Hollywood has been exposed for, yes, absolutely being hypocritical and having absolutely no moral core. It's why they have to rush to the cameras every time there's some woke controversy to pretend that they do. That's what they think morals are, pass sweeping judgments on everyone and claim that they're holier than thou, but none of us is buying it. Those days are done. We know they've exposed themselves. The worst thing that could possibly have happened to these Hollywood stars happened, and that's social media. We got to know who they really are, and we're disgusted. You've got stars like Ben Affleck, who's running around, never making it to the bottom of more than 4 bottles a night, I guess, trying to, blame everyone in his circle for his problems, including his lovely ex-wife, Jennifer Garner. But when it comes to acting across from a Republican, well, he would never. Okay, enjoy your bottle. I mean, Harvey Weinstein, you mentioned, who the entire industry propped up. James Franco. I could go down the list of the Me Too'ers who have been celebrated by these actors and actresses after we knew what they were. I mean, just left, right, and center. There's somebody with another sin that they're trying to cover up by pretending that they're holier than thou. Alec Baldwin, all the nights on Saturday Night Live, poking fun at President Trump, trying to take him down as a... Meanwhile, he's just shot a person to death. He's, I could go down the list of the things he's done with his children, his ex, blah, blah, blah. So we know who they are, and we know that they hate at least half the country. And the one good thing about them moralizing is we just don't listen to them anymore. They're stupid woke movies no one's going to see. They're boring and they're stupid. And the thing with Will Smith, yes, it was telling. He can't control his temper. For me, I thought it was more about him trying to make the moment about himself. He wanted to make himself look like a big man. And I thought the tell was in the fact that he initially laughed at the joke. And it wasn't until he looked over and he saw that Jada was mad that he thought it was a big moment for him. For him. What would a real man genuinely angry about that joke do in the moment? You know what he would do? He would make the same face Jada made, and backstage, he would go up to Chris Rock and say, not okay, not cool. And they'd have it out man to man behind the stage. Why'd he do it on the stage? You tell me, Dan. Because he wanted an audience. Because what's really at stake for all of these Hollywood actors and actresses? Their egos, their public image. That's what they care about, not these alleged woke causes, not anything Ron DeSantis is doing, their own pocketbooks and their willingness, their ability to look at all of us and say, I'm better than you.
And I think, I completely agree with that, Megan. And I think what we also saw on Oscar night, actually, was that how these cretinous folk react in the moment is very different to how they react once they've been advised by their agents and their publicists. Because, of course, Will Smith offered no apology to Chris Rock in his acceptance speech. And I think he showed no remorse for what he did. He found the whole thing hysterically funny. And the crowd, of course, did not react in any negative way to the fact that they'd just witnessed a physical assault. In fact, they gave him that standing O.
They're so out of touch, Dan. I mean, they're so, this same group of people walked into this award ceremony. And let me just say, I like Jada. I've interviewed her a few times, and I think she handled herself very well. The husband, obviously not so much. They walked into this event getting $140,000 gift bags per person. Okay. The average American can't even pay their rent right now. They can't even fill their gas tank without really sweating it and getting that sick feeling in your stomach. So they're so out of touch. They can't relate to anything real people are going through. And to me, Will Smith, I know people are like, oh, he nailed it on his little speech when he won the award. I don't think so. I put him in the same boat as I put Meghan Markle. With her whining and crying about the alleged racists who she wouldn't name in the royal family, and about how hard it is to be a princess. And no one cares what title your kid is getting. No one cares. They have their own problems to worry about. And Will Smith is up there like, the people say the mean things. No one gives a fig. No one. You're a huge star. You're probably one of the top 3 biggest stars in the world. With your $140,000 gift bag that you probably gave to your maid because it doesn't mean anything to you. Do I give 2 figs whether somebody's saying something not nice about you or how it's hard to withstand the barbs that come your way? No, I don't. Stop it. Sit down. Take your little statue. Go home to your gazillion-dollar home with your amazing and gorgeous wife and enjoy the great, big, beautiful life that you've managed to carve out for yourself. And stop asking me, and more importantly, my imaginary viewer, Madge, who's in the middle of Iowa, working hard with kids and a full-time job, to feel sorry for you. We don't.
But by the way, Megan, even having this conversation, according to The Guardian, makes us downright racist and proponents of anti-blackness. Were you aware of that?
Okay, fine. At this point, we have to just okay, great. Point made. Let's move on. Like, I don't understand, because I will say, if anything in this matter, you tell me if Dan Wootton had run up on the Oscar stage and slapped Chris Rock across the face, the headlines would have been very different. No one.
I'd never work again.
For you.
I'd never work again.
It would have been white man attacks black man. They would have made it all about race.
Yeah, and by the way, Benedict Cumberbatch wouldn't have worked again if he had done that, neither would Jake Gyllenhaal. And there was loads of that sort of hypocrisy during the ceremony itself, Megan, because there were two black hosts and one white host. But the black host made lots of jokes about how horrible white people were. So I think the whole ceremony was filled with a load of hypocrisy on that level. And of course, I can laugh at it. I think
Amy
it's funny.
Schumer.
But...
Yeah. Amy Schumer then jumped in with about, the horrible white women who are calling police unnecessarily on black people.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? You should know what's happening in the news before you make your stupid jokes, because there's no question that there's been some moronic calls to police over black people here and everywhere who weren't doing anything wrong, as there have been about white people here and everywhere who weren't doing anything wrong. But what's happening in the news right now as a result of all those narratives, those false narratives about cops taking the bad actions of some and extrapolating them to all, is we had a defund the police movement, we had a soft on crime movement and getting soft on crime DAs into offices, and now the murder rate in our major cities is up to 40, sometimes 50%, up over 50% in several cities. And what we're seeing right now in places like New York City is we're seeing a lot of black on white crime, women getting shoved down down subway steps, women getting stabbed repeatedly with axes, often by black men. It's not a purely racial issue, but now is not the time to be shaming white women for calling the police on black defendants, all right? Because sometimes that's the way the crime goes. And sometimes those phone calls do need to be made. And Amy Schumer, living in her gazillion-dollar home with her $140,000 gift bag, is not in a position to comment on it.
Yeah, no, indeed. Indeed. Megan Kelly, I love your analysis. It was cutting but brilliant.
Today.
It's great to have you back. And of course, you can catch the fantastic Megan Kelly show on Sirius XM, YouTube, and as a podcast. Well worth listening to. Coming up, scaremongering scientist Patrick Vallance has sadly resurfaced. But is he right that we'll have to ramp up restrictions in the future to deal with growing COVID cases? My superstar panel return to debate that ridiculous proposition in the media buzz. Plus, first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But first, have Brits fallen out of love with the NHS? Brendan O'Neill investigates next.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Brendan O'Neill is tonight's outsider. A devastating survey by two of Britain's top health think tanks has found public trust in the NHS is plummeting, just as spending on it skyrockets. The King's Fund and Nuffield Trust found that just 36% of people were satisfied with the NHS in 2021, the lowest since 1997. That's as healthcare spending went from 7.2% of our GDP in 2000 to 12.8% 20 years later. And whereas 27% of government public spending was consumed by health in 2000, by 2024 it's predicted to hit 44%. Those behind the study said there appeared to be a halo effect around the NHS during the pandemic, but that the grace period started to come to an end last year when people saw other services opening up and wondered why they were still being turned away from what many think had become the national COVID service. Brendan O'Neill, I'm not surprised one jot about this poll. It's not something that we're allowed to discuss, is it? Because we have to praise the glorious NHS at every single moment of the day. But the glorious NHS sent me a text message this week saying, don't go to the GP, we're shut, we can't see you for any form of appointment. And people all over the country, Brendan, are getting text messages like that on a constant basis.
Absolutely. And I wasn't surprised by these surveys at all, actually. And it's not surprising that they came after the lockdown period, because this was, as you say, this was when it became the national COVID service, when we basically stopped treating anything except COVID-19, and lots of people got sick as a result. Cancer went untreated or undetected. Heart disease potentially got worse too. We know there's been a surge in mental health problems. So I think what's happened is, because the NHS was pretty much closed down in some ways during the pandemic and during the lockdowns in particular, we've stored up a lot of health problems. People couldn't get to see GPs, and they were incredibly frustrated with this health service that we are told is the envy of the world. So I'm not surprised people are losing faith in the NHS.
No, and they're losing faith, Brendan, at a time when we pump more and more money in. It's not working, is it?
It's not working, and I'm in favour of universal healthcare. I'm in favour of free healthcare. I think it's a good idea, but it's not working. It's not really doing what it's supposed to do. And actually, it proves a theory I've had for a long time, which is that the problem with the NHS is not a lack of funding. It gets loads and loads of money every year. The problem is that it doesn't really know what it's for anymore. So not only did it basically shut itself down during the COVID pandemic, but also it's become an institution that wants to tell us how to live and how to think, as much as treat us when we're ill. So, it's become incredibly politically correct. We've heard about men now being asked if they're pregnant. There is a whole new layer of managerial officers and diversity officers who get paid an extraordinary amount of money, essentially to politicize the NHS. And all of those things mean that the health service has lost its way. And it often feels to people like a hectoring institution rather than an institution that mends us when we're not well. And that's what it needs to focus on now.
Yeah, and Brendan, it doesn't feel like the NHS actually want to see us face to face. And I actually think they cut that contact at their peril, because really we have a right, or we should have a right, to see a doctor whenever we believe it's necessary.
That's right. And there's always been a bit of a hostility, the notorious GP receptionist who, is always badgering us to say, why do you want an appointment? Do you really need it? So that's always gone on, but it's getting worse and worse because we were discouraged from seeing GPs over the past couple of years. I got a terrifying glimpse of the future when I had to have an appointment with a GP over a computer in a pharmacy, where there was a GP on the other end of the computer telling me to put things in my ear and stick something in my throat. It was an incredibly disembodied experience, and not the kind of thing you expect from the health service. And I think an additional problem to all of this is that we treat the NHS as a national religion. Do you remember the Olympics opening ceremony in 2012, where people were basically dancing around the NHS like it was some form of modern sun god? And what that means is we don't have open, frank discussions about where it's going wrong. We have to grow up, realise the NHS is not a religion, it's a health service, and it needs to do a lot better.
Well, it does, because, of course, this poll could not have come on a worse day for the NHS, Brendan. You know, the Shrewsbury maternity scandal revealing 201 babies died needlessly due to poor care. And I think it just shows why the public are starting to lose faith. This report has taken years to come to fruition, and we still actually don't know for sure that the right measures have been put in place to guarantee that it's changed.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues, I mean, that the report about the mothers and babies in Shrewsbury is just horrific, and so many more questions need to be answered about that. People need to be compensated. People need to be treated with respect, which they weren't for a long time. And I think one of the issues is that lots of people around the country, on the one hand, we're told this is the best institution in the world. But on the other hand, lots of people have a pretty rotten experience with the NHS, if we're being honest. Those mothers and their children are a prime example. Much lower down, people have a pretty shoddy experience with the NHS on a day-to-day basis sometimes. If we want this to be the envy of the world, it really needs to buck up its ideas. It needs to focus on health, not social re-engineering, and it needs to make sure that it is a good service that sees people face to face with a good bedside manner. That's what we expect from the health service. That's what we pay for, and that's what we should get.
Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as a certain doomsday scientist makes an unwelcome return to try and scare MPs into keeping lockdown measures forever.
Operationally, to ramp things up again if you need to is crucially important. So don't allow things to disappear so that you can't actually start them up.
Should we really arm the architects of devastating COVID restrictions with the power to do it all over again? My superstar panel return to debate that tonight. The revered political journalist John Sargent, the activist and entrepreneur Adam Brooks, and the royal and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. Then, as MPs continue to struggle when asked to define what is a woman,
a woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
People are complex, that they are different.
Can any politician who refuses to recognise basic biology be trusted by voters? The uncompromising columnist Rod Liddell weighs in. He's uncancelled at 10:40. Why are lockdowns still a reality for our greatest generation in care homes? Leandra Ashton, the ex-Coronation Street actress whose attempts to liberate her gran ended in an arrest, gives evidence to my lockdown inquiry in her first interview since launching a new care home watchdog. As it's claimed 10 million people would struggle to cope without notes and coins, is the push to make Britain a cashless society ethical? And what's really behind it? Plus, Donald Trump has come out swinging after doubters deny this special sporting achievement actually happened. All that and much more to come in the Media Buzz. You'll also get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press throughout the next hour. And as ever, I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the end of the show. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story. A damning report has found catastrophic errors at the Shrewsbury and Telford hospitals, saying 201 babies and 9 mothers could have survived if they'd received better care. The independent inquiry looked at more than 1,500 instances and revealed repeated failures over a 20-year period. A number of babies suffered skull fractures and were left brain damaged, and several mothers were refused caesarean sections. The report highlighted a culture at the Trust which meant some midwives were too scared to involve consultants. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said the failures have no place in the NHS.
To all the families that have suffered so greatly,
I am sorry. The report clearly shows that you were failed by a service that was there to help you and your loved ones to bring life into this world. We will make the changes that the report says are needed at both a local and national level.
Sajid Javid. Well, the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, today said he'll appeal a parole board decision to release the mother of baby P from prison. Tracy Connolly was jailed in 2009 for causing or allowing the death of her 17-month-old son Peter at her home in London. He'd suffered more than 50 injuries despite being on the at-risk register. The parole board, however, cited Connolly's progress while in custody and time on licence as reasons for their decision. British ports will be given legal powers to refuse entry to ferry operators that don't pay the minimum wage. The Transport Secretary laid out a package of measures in response to P&O Ferries' decision to sack 800 staff. Grant Shapps says his request to prevent entry to ferry services that don't pay fairly will be in force until the government makes it a legal requirement. The top United Nations human rights official has said Russia may have committed war crimes in Ukraine and urged Vladimir Putin to withdraw his troops. Michelle Bachelet said at least 77 medical facilities have been destroyed, including 50 hospitals. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry says its forces were regrouping near Ukraine's capital, Kiev, and the northern city of Chernihiv in order to focus on occupied territories in the east. But Russian attacks in both locations continue today, according to military sources. Hollywood actor Bruce Willis is stepping away from his career after being diagnosed with aphasia. In an Instagram post, his daughter confirmed the condition is impacting his cognitive abilities, and as such, he has decided to step back and retire. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Just one front page in so far, and it's the Metro leading on the news concerning the MP Jamie Wallace, who today came out as transgender and recounted his rape ordeal. He's a Tory MP. I think we might be talking about him later in the show, actually. And this is what Putin's peace looks like, they say, alongside a picture of just really shocking destruction in Kiev. My superstar panel back with me now, the journalist and broadcaster John Sargent, the businessman and social media superstar Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, the UK's doomsday scientist-in-chief has resurfaced to terrify us all again. Sir Patrick Vallance delivered some trademark scaremongering to MPs on the Science and Technology Committee today, defying what seems like basic science to me to warn that COVID-19, the virus itself, could get worse again, and suggesting lockdown measures should remain forever to guard against future variants.
Try to dissect which components of restrictions were the ones that were the most important, because the world should learn from this, and we should learn from it, so that there's an advice handbook for the future. It's not a foregone conclusion that evolution to increase growth and transmission, which is what the virus wants to do, necessarily is associated with reduced severity. Given the uncertainty that I've described, being able operationally to ramp things up again if you need to is crucially important. So don't allow things to disappear so that you can't actually start them up.
They just don't want it to end, do they? These creeps want to control our lives forever. Of course, cases have risen since Freedom Day, but that's all part of living with COVID. As Vallance later told MPs, Omicron has likely now peaked. So please just stop this relentless project fair and let us get on with our lives. Adam, surely we can't arm the architects of highly damaging yet ineffective lockdowns with the power to do this to us all over again.
No way. The public will, you know, I speak to people every day through my job in the pubs and out and about, and there is no way that the majority of the public will ever comply to the measures that were inflicted on us before. You know, we now know the damages. The economy can't survive. My industry wouldn't survive restrictions again. So we've got a few options here. You know, we either go down a path of total destruction or we learn to live with a virus. And I mean, look, the vaccines are there for the old and the vulnerable. They've probably had 3 or 4 by now. They've probably had 1 or 2 infections as well. So how much more can we do? You know, I certainly won't be having no more injections. You know, a lot of people I speak to are the same. So I don't really see where they think they've got the power to do this. You know, scientists don't dictate our future. People dictate their future, and we vote for people to dictate our future, not scientists.
John Sargent, you think Adam and I have got this all wrong?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Completely wrong. I don't know what bit do I take apart first.
Go on.
Patrick Vallance is not saying, wouldn't it be lovely to get back to controls as soon as possible? He's simply saying, we've got to learn from this. This was a fantastically serious moment when they look back on, you know, what were the crises that you plan for. Pandemic is always there. If you get a pandemic, you've really got to take it seriously, and you've got to do that quickly. Now, you've got to get people used to the idea that you don't just, with living with COVID, doesn't mean living without COVID. COVID doesn't exist. It does have the power to evolve. It does still have the power to surprise. It's not affected by borders. You can't talk sense to the virus. It's got its own violent way of living.
So has flu every year.
I know, and we've
never locked down for flu.
No. That doesn't mean that's an argument by analogy. It doesn't mean to say, oh, it's like flu. We don't know what it's like. We don't know what the life cycle will be of this virus. So there's no point in saying, I really do think we should stop this. We should never do this again. We're not talking to the virus.
But do you think
We're not
lockdowns
talking to a sort of COVID.
Do you think lockdowns work?
No, a lot of these things didn't work very well. And there was an attempt at the beginning, first of all, to say, look, if we all get this together, and if we all get COVID, it'll be all right. There'll be a herd immunity will develop. That proved to be wrong. We were also taught the idea, how about zero COVID? Ask the Chinese how they're getting on with zero COVID.
But on the herd immunity point, though, we never gave it a chance, though, because remember, that was Patrick Vallance's initial point back in early March 2020. And he warned that if we didn't go for that herd immunity strategy, we would end up with a massive peak with huge numbers of deaths in the winter of 2020 into 2021. And so I still stand by the fact that the original strategy was the best one.
Yeah, well, no, because the strategy has some sort of sense now, because we've not got 100% people in terms of vaccination. So there is a sense in which people are going to be caught, whether they like it or not, by COVID, which will give them a certain amount of immunity. But they could catch COVID much more seriously than the rest of us. I've had 4 injections. My arm's still shaking. But, you know, I know what the policy is that we should take responsibility for it ourselves. It shouldn't be a matter of saying, wouldn't it be wonderful to have police patrolling up and down the streets every morning telling us what to do. The curious thing is that rather like at the end of the Second World War, people didn't, in fact, believe that we lived in a dictatorship. I don't believe we're in a dictatorship now simply because the government orders us to stay behind and do this and do that. That was actually carried out reluctantly.
I think there was a disturbing amount of authoritarian policy.
Well, I think that's hysterical, and I think you should just
It's not really.
go
Someone
away.
like myself couldn't go out and earn a living. I had to close my business.
Oh, sure, I know. And I'm not saying that
and a lot of
nobody was
people
hurt.
couldn't see their relatives die. The kids couldn't go to school. We saw
Dan,
deaths
we
as a
all
result of
know
it, and he
how-
wants to ramp these up again, Daisy, potentially.
I think that you and Adam listened to a completely different evidence session than John and I listened to, because that is categorically not
Maybe because
not
you
what
were
he
both
said.
happy with lockdowns and Adam and I weren't.
Lockdown. I was never happy with lockdown. But also, I'll come to that in a minute, but just going back to your point about how we've listened to the scientists too much and we shouldn't listen to people like Patrick Vallance. But actually, you've compromised that argument by saying we should have gone for herd immunity, because the reason we didn't go to herd immunity is because of the politicians, not because of the scientists. It was unacceptable politically to see that.
Well, Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty both changed their advice. Then they should have stood by what they said to begin with.
They couldn't do it.
It wasn't going to work.
Because what you had, as far as politicians were concerned, were deaths now or deaths later, and they chose deaths later. They didn't know that's what they were choosing, but they did choose deaths later because that is going to be the impact of lockdown. But deaths now was too unacceptable to politicians, to MPs and to the public, and that's why it happened.
Well, Patrick Vallance denied that was ever the strategy. So to somehow try and say that he was not in lockstep with what the politicians did is wrong, because he then quickly became one of the strongest proponents, alongside Chris Whitty, of hard, fast lockdowns. And that's what my concern is.
Because
that actually the next time there is a new pandemic, the next time there is a new virus, what we're going to do is the Chinese strategy of very quick, very brutal lockdowns, which we've also seen don't work.
No, you're just being pessimistic, Dan. I mean,
I am being pessimistic, and I think there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic.
But this assumption, we won't learn anything, it'll just be a replay of last time. Why not should it be?
Because he's saying he wants to keep these measures in reserve to ramp them up. And what I'm saying is a lot of these measures should not be in reserve whatsoever. School closures, for example, they should not be in reserve. They should be off the table.
You didn't listen to what he said. What he said was, we must learn what worked and what didn't.
That's it.
We must learn. When he talked about a handbook, this is what we were all saying at the beginning of the pandemic. Where is the handbook?
Or why don't we know more? We were desperate to know more.
There was meant to be a pandemic unit that got ready that had done absolutely nothing.
They went back on known pandemic
strategies because of what China did.
Exactly.
We copied China.
Sweden actually followed the pandemic rule book more than anyone else. And look,
But surely,
they did well.
surely then you would agree.
Nobody got it totally right.
Yeah, and learning lessons is the most important thing.
It is. I'm sorry, but when I hear Patrick Vallance sit there talking about we need to be able to ramp this up again, no.
But not if
you're saying then, so we shouldn't stand
No, we
ready.
should never lock down again. We should never lock down again.
If there's a fire, we mustn't get the fire engines out because we don't want all that trouble again.
No.
Now, wait a moment.
We should absolutely have fire engines, but what we shouldn't do if there's a damn fire 3 miles away is lock everyone up in the city in perpetuity.
Nobody's suggesting that you should lock people up in perpetuity. I mean, that is just complete, sort of crazy description.
Because what's happening in China?
Eminent science.
What's happening in China? And we followed the Chinese playbook. Yes. And as you point out, that strategy has been a disaster.
The ONS estimates that 99% of the population now have antibodies to COVID-19.
But that's great. But also, his argument is unarguable, where he said there is no guarantee that just because Omicron is milder than Delta, that it'll keep going in that direction. There's also no guarantee it's going to go in the other direction.
Yeah. But just like every flu season, there's a bit of a variation. Some years we get a really bad flu season.
That's where you're making a big mistake by saying like. When you say like, it means you are comparing it with something which may be wrong.
But we've had other coronaviruses before.
But if
there's lots of coronaviruses circulating.
We don't know whether it's like this or like that. We're still finding out a great deal about this blasted virus.
Well, everything so far suggests that the virus has become more mild, the more herd immunity.
Oh, how lovely. And so we know that, do we?
I'm very confident.
You're confident.
I'm very confident.
Well done, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor, for your guarantee. I'm very grateful.
People like myself, people like Dan, will not be locked in our homes again.
No way.
Yes,
all right, okay.
No way. No way. He can ramp it up all he wants. Vallance can ramp it up all he wants, and I will ignore him.
Listen and learn.
I'm sorry. I have listened and learned from the scientists who got this right. Sunitra Gupta, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff. I'm sorry, Whitty and Vallance got it wrong. Now, Donald Trump has released a statement of huge significance. No, he hasn't confirmed he's running for the White House in 2024, but he has let the world know that he made a hole-in-one. Impressive. The former president's love of golf is well documented, but when Republican Senate hopeful Tim Swain tweeted this picture with the caption, "Trump just made a hole-in-one," the post was deluged with doubters, can you believe it? So Trump, still banned from Twitter and Facebook, obviously, he couldn't defend himself directly, but he did release a lengthy statement saying he's a very modest individual who doesn't like to brag, But many people are asking, so I'll give it to you now. It is 100% true. I hit a 5-iron which sailed magnificently into a rather strong wind with approximately 5 feet of cut, whereupon it bounced twice and then went clank into the hole. These great tour players noticed it before I did because their eyes are slightly better, but on that one hole only, their swings weren't. Anyway, there's a lot of chatter about it, quite exciting, and people everywhere seem to be asking for the facts. The 75-year-old was playing with legendary golfer Ernie Els at his Florida Trump International Club. And here's the video, by the way, of concrete proof of Trump's hole-in-one.
President made a hole-in-one, 180-yard 5-iron.
It's there. It's there. That's great.
There it is.
That's great. Thank you. That's
the guys want a picture with you. You don't see that very often.
Donald Trump there making golf great again. Daisy McAndrew, Adam Brooks, John Stargent, do stand by because coming up, as it's claimed 10 million people would struggle to cope without notes and coins, is the push to make Britain a cashless society unethical? My Superstar panel will return to debate that at 10:30. But next, why are care home residents who were forced to suffer in isolation during the pandemic still having their human rights restricted? Ex-Coronation Street actress Leandra Ashton is next to give evidence to my lockdown inquiry in her first interview since launching a new care home watchdog. She's straight after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Former Coronation Street actress Leandra Ashton is next to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry. Now, nowhere was lockdown hysteria felt more inhumanely than in care homes, where residents with precious time left on this earth were left isolated from loved ones. And the cruel madness continues to this day, with restrictions on visits remaining, 3-day quarantine for gifts, and ludicrous lockdowns based on just a couple of cases. Well, in a video that went viral just before the second lockdown, heroic Leandra and her mum sensationally stood up to these barbaric measures.
So let's just make this very clear. My nan, my 97-year-old nan here, who we have taken from the care home because we haven't seen her for 9 months, is now being taken back by force to her care home. My mother has been arrested. My mother is in the back of the car here. She is a nurse. She is a fully qualified nurse who is wishing to care for her own mother. And here we have an incredible use of police time to take my 97-year-old grandmother back into a care home where she is deteriorating, where we haven't been able to see her for 9 months. Nan, I love you and we are going to fight for you.
Now, tragically, Leandra's beloved grandmother died in January, but thanks to her family railing against the system, she was able to spend her last months at home. Since then, the tenacious actress has launched the People's Care Watchdog, which vows to hold public bodies and Parliament to account for the gross failings in the care sector. And I'm delighted to say Leandra joins me now for her first interview since launching the Watchdog. Leandra, thank you. I mean, I look at those clips and I just feel like it was genuinely barbaric what we did to people in their final years. Luckily, you were able to get your grandmother out so she could spend her final months with her family. But a lot of folk are still stuck in these care homes and the rules remain inhumane, even now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think people, because of our video going viral, people became aware that there were restrictions on visiting, that elderly and young people were being isolated in care homes. People became aware that perhaps there wasn't the right medical care, GPs not going into care homes. But this is still going on today. And this is what I think is totally barbaric. I mean, we had 8-9 months of my nan being in a care home, not being able to see her deterioration. She was dehydrated, she had malnutrition, she lost weight. And yet there are families that are still in that situation who still can't get in to see their loved ones. It just seems like, where's the common sense gone?
And one thing that you point out that I think is really disturbing is the fact that folk now in a lot of care homes have to book appointment times if they're lucky enough to be allowed in. Now, the issue with that is when the care homes are doing dodgy things, and we know a lot of that went on over the pandemic. You have a lot of examples of really appalling, illegal things going on in these care homes. It gives them an opportunity to cover it up because a family member can't just pop in.
Exactly. It's the fact that COVID has shone a light into systems of care that have been failing for decades. They've been understaffed, they've been run for profit. The majority of our care homes are run by private equity firms. And I think people have been really focused on COVID being an issue for people in care homes. But in actual fact, 2 of the 3 co-founders of the People's Care Watchdog, myself and another lady called Fiona, our loved ones nearly died from neglect. It was neglect. In Fiona's case, her mother-in-law had 6 grade 4 pressure ulcers, which means it goes down to bone and tendon. And in the short video that we've created that's on our website, her own son says, you would be prosecuted for treating an animal like that. And yet still to this day, there's no safeguarding, which is something that should be in place to protect our most vulnerable citizens. And yet it's still not there.
But this is the problem with what's happened with COVID, right? And I knew, and this is one of the reasons why I was so opposed to so many of the unnecessary lockdown measures, is COVID is being used as an excuse.
It's being used as an excuse, and COVID is not the only illness out there. It's not the only disease. People suffering from dementia need help. They need care. They need families to be going in and checking up on them, because very often care homes are understaffed. They are run for profit. So what we can see now is that COVID has shone a light on the fact that the families have been propping up those systems. But it's not just about the care homes, it's about the local authorities. It's about the social services, adult social services. Where have they been? Where has the Care Quality Commission been? For 2 years, they didn't inspect care homes. 2 years. And it's incredible. And in that time, all kinds of things have happened behind closed doors, and safeguarding issues are still outstanding.
So what can someone do sitting at home watching this when they have issues seeing their relative, their loved one, their friend at a care home. What can they actually do? Because our very own Professor Carol Sikora on Monday night was saying he had to try and get his friend, who was a fellow oncologist previously, out of a care home, and it proved impossible. So there's a lot of people who know the system who are struggling with this. So what can someone do? Because if these are the rules given by the care home, a lot of folk feel powerless.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The care homes are making these rules that are unlawful and very often illegal. So we still have the Human Rights Act. It is still at the moment in place in the UK. And that's what we need to quote when we're speaking to people. The fact that there is the right to a family life. People have the right to a family life. Also... So
challenge the managers, is that the key? Because obviously the staff members presumably are just following orders.
Yeah, I think it's about educating. What we found in our own support group, which has now become the campaign, is educating families so that they can then go and educate the social workers, surprisingly enough, and the managers of care homes, because often they don't realise that they are breaking human rights acts.
And how can people get more information about your watchdog? Because I imagine this is something that a lot of people really want to get involved with.
Well, we really are a citizens-led research project. We want to gather the evidence of what has gone on behind closed doors. And the only way we can do that is if the whole of the public get behind this. So we're looking for first-hand accounts from relatives, from care workers, from professionals, people who are willing to come forward and say, this is what went well and this is what didn't go well. This is what we need to improve upon. And then with that evidence, we can start to hold people to account, public bodies to account, and most importantly, create a care system that's going to work for us all. Because this can't happen again. It's going to happen again.
Indeed. Well, look, it's brilliant work. Thank you so much for doing it. That was the actress Leandra Ashton in our lockdown inquiry. Now, coming up, as MPs continue to struggle to define what a woman is, can any politician who refuses to recognise basic biology be trusted by voters? Rod Liddle will give his take at Uncancelled at 10:40. But next, as a new study claims 10 million people would struggle in a cashless society, is the plan to ditch notes and coins unethical? My Superstar panel return to debate that next, and we'll have a first look at some more of tomorrow's newspapers' front pages too, so do not go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. More front pages have been delivered, and it's a very busy news day with the papers going for different stories. The Daily Telegraph reveals Vladimir Putin's top aides are afraid to tell him about Russia's military blunders in Ukraine. The UK's top intelligence chief, Sir Jeremy Fleming, said Putin overestimated the ability of his forces to secure a rapid victory, and demoralised Russian soldiers are now refusing to follow orders. Elsewhere, it's reported that council tax is set to hit £2,000 a year in the latest cost of living blow. And there you see a picture of Bruce Willis with his daughters and ex-wife Demi Moore. Of course, the legendary Hollywood actor will be stepping away from his acting career after being diagnosed with a degenerative brain disorder. It was announced today. Really sad news. More really sad news leading the Daily Star, the tragic death of the wanted singer Tom Parker, aged just 33, following a battle with brain cancer. His wife Kelsey said he fought until the end. Our hearts are broken. His bandmates from The Wanted released a joint statement too, saying words can't express the loss and sadness we feel. And we'll be talking more about Tom towards the end of the show. The Times leads with the fact that childbirth is not safe for women in England following avoidable mother and baby deaths in an NHS scandal. The author of a scathing report into Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust said many failures there were not unique. It shockingly revealed some 1,600 incidents at the trust where women and infants died or were left disabled or traumatised between 2000 and 2019. The Guardian reports police are looking into 600 cases linked to that damning maternity scandal. They're also covering a potential lifeline for Ukraine, their trains, which is shuttling in humanitarian aid and helping evacuate refugees into Poland. And a terrifying story too on the front of The Sun. David and Victoria Beckham's £40 million West London home was burgled by a masked intruder while they were at home. The couple said to be unaware of the break-in, which was only discovered when their 17-year-old son, Cruz, noticed a spare bedroom had been ransacked. The raider is reported to have taken thousands of pounds of designer and electric goods, leaving the pair, not surprisingly, shaken up. My superstar panel return now. The journalist and broadcaster John Sargent, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, fears have been expressed that 10 million people would struggle to cope with a cashless society as we advance towards life without coins and notes. Although Brits are now benefiting from advances like online banking and shopping, with only 17% of transactions being made via cash, a report by the Royal Society of Arts found that a shocking number of us would be totally at a loss, prompting questions about whether the move is ethical. The so-called dash to digital, spurred on by hygiene concerns related to handling cash during the pandemic, has seen thousands of banks close in recent years, and 1 in 3 Brits report having cash transactions refused since the first lockdown, as high street brands including Prezzo and Itsu snub punters who want to use notes. There is a more sinister element to all of this as well, of course, after woke tyrant Justin Trudeau froze the bank accounts of hundreds of Canadians linked to the Freedom Convoy last month. There are real concerns that our funds could be used against us if we are unable to hold them in our hands. Now, Adam Brooks, this is an interesting one. Obviously, you're a publican. I imagine cash is pretty important to your business.
I mean, many of my older customers want to use cash. Many of them go to the cash point before they come in, just so they can use cash. You know, I think it's an old East End thing as well. You know, everyone wants that little bit of emergency money in their pocket. And there's simply, you know, some of these elderly customers just couldn't cope with a debit card. You know, many of them probably don't even have one. But there's so many. I could talk about this for hours on the consequences of this. But
Adam, I'd love to ask you from your point of view, so not from your customer's point of view, but from your point of view as a business, running a business. Because a lot of businesses now are refusing to take cash because it's not convenient for them to take cash, because they say...
It stops thieving.
They say they're less likely to be robbed. They say, that it's easier and quicker. They can get through more customers in a quicker time because everyone's tapping rather than fiddling around for coins. And they say that handling the cash is inconvenient to them, having it...
It's never inconvenient to take cash in a pub or a bar, but the costs of taking card payments, everyone's got that cost in a business, and that will go up another 20%. It's another cost that we'd have to bear.
Well, and it also leaves businesses more at the mercy of the credit card companies, doesn't it? It puts a lot of power to them.
If they put their costs up, we can't do anything about it.
But what about these more sinister thoughts, Adam, connected to what happened with the Freedom Convoy, Justin Trudeau freezing people's bank accounts in a free society?
It would be another step closer to a Chinese state social credit system. If I say something on this show that the government didn't like, I might have my card frozen tomorrow. That's a scary sort of future for myself and for my kids. So I think we must always keep the choice of cash on the table. Whether people want to use it or not, it should always remain a choice.
John, do you still use cash?
I try not to. I love the fact we don't have to have all this cash hanging around. I used to pile up lots of old pennies because you'd go into a shop and they'd be busy trying to get their small change at you. Right. So you'd go out and think, do I have to have all this stuff? And you can't throw it away because that's immoral, isn't it? Throwing money into a bin, saying, I'm so rich, I'm going to throw it away. But I'm tempted to. No, for me, and this is purely personal, right? I'm not talking about the millions of people who find it difficult. I find it extremely easy and love the fact
you like the convenience of it.
I love the convenience of it. I love the fact that I can just get rid of it quickly, that I don't have to, that I can, if they say, do you want to add a gratuity, I can do it. And I like all that. I like all the fact it's so straightforward compared with always messing around. And
so Adam, you've
and if you're out with other people, just be able to put all your cards in the table.
So what do I do, John, when my latest little baby loses a tooth? What do I stick my debit card under her pillow?
Oh, that's for goodness sake. If you can't think of a little present for your child that isn't a sixpence or something else.
Adam, don't worry about buskers. I have had buskers who've got card machines.
That's amazing.
I know, but you don't do it, though, do you?
But actually, there are some big issues. I mean, it's going to happen anyway, whether or not if you look at Sweden, which has been way ahead, Sweden's going to be cashless by next year.
Yeah.
Now, that's a choice.
Doesn't have to happen.
That's a choice they've made. No, but I mean, there are very good arguments, but I think that the vulnerable have to be protected and we have to find a way. But if you look at, buses mostly don't take cash anymore. That's really confusing and worrying for pensioners. But the big issue is it does stop money laundering. It does stop tax evasion. It does stop all sorts of things.
Big Brother is watching us at all times.
But then you've got privacy.
Wherever we are, whatever we spend, are watching us, John. They know.
No, Dan, you're in
they
this
know.
You're this apocalyptic mood where all these changes, it's all going to go wrong and we're going to be snared by some ghastly state. What about the good things about this? What about the churches? You go into a church now and you want to see round it. And how do you thought in the old days, you put money into a box thinking that'll be wrenched off the wall by somebody. But now you can just use a card to pay, to give a bit of money to charity.
It's the right place. All right.
It's wonderful.
All right, pros and cons, I guess. Now, who would have thought that Jim Carrey, a man who found fame talking out of his behind, would be one of the few Hollywood A-listers not doing that in regards to Will Smith's now infamous Oscars slap? In a really refreshing new interview, the Ace Ventura star did away with lovey BS to express his outrage at the adoring reception Smith received as he picked up Best Actor at Sunday's Oscars minutes after assaulting comedian Chris Rock on stage.
I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
They asked Chris, do you want to file charges? And Chris apparently said no, he did not.
He doesn't want the hassle. I'd have announced this morning that I was suing Will for $200 million because that video is going to be there forever. It's going to be ubiquitous. If you want to yell from the audience and disapprove or show a disapproval or say something on Twitter or whatever, you do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words. It was just a selfish moment that cast a pall over the whole thing.
Love that. After seeing the likes of Tiffany Haddish, who starred with Will's wife Jada Pinkett Smith in 2017's Girls Trip, described the assault as the most beautiful thing she's ever seen, and writers for The Guardian accused critics of, quote, anti-blackness. I say thank God we have Carrie to expose the dumb and dumber of the media elite for what they really are. Meanwhile, someone who definitely isn't part of Hollywood's liberal cabal has come forward to help Smith. Help, very much in inverted commas there. O.J. Simpson, the basketballer who famously stood trial for the 1994 murders of his wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman before being jailed for armed robbery and kidnapping in 2007, admitted he could relate to the Men in Black actor after his outburst.
I understood the feeling. Now, in my life, I've been through a lot of crap, and I was raising two young kids, and every comedian in the country had an OJ routine, and don't think I wouldn't want to slapped a couple of those guys, but you got to accept it's humor, and I didn't even think that was all that egregious. I thought it was a semi-unfunny joke, but I don't know. If I would have done that in front of 1 billion people watching around the world, they would have given me life without. I'm just saying.
American footballer, of course, O.J. Simpson. Not the ally I think Will Smith needed today. Daisy McAndrew, Adam Brooks, John Sargent, do stand by, because coming up, has the mask finally slipped on Nicola Sturgeon's COVID hypocrisy? Adam certainly thinks so. Plus, we look at the remarkable story of Jamie Wallace, the Conservative who came out as the UK's first transgender MP. All that and more as I crown today's greatest Britain Union jackass. Next, though, as we suffer through another week of politicians failing to understand biology, should MPs who can't define a woman be trusted by voters? Rod Liddle is here in just a few seconds. First, though, here's what's coming up tomorrow.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, social media activist Zuby, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe and GBNews star Mark Dolan are all on hand to give me their uncensored takes on the headlines of the day. And I'll break down the top stories with my superstar panel, the Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. This week has been dominated by some of our most senior politicians who don't seem to want to express a basic biological fact publicly because they're so scared of being cancelled.
Is a woman.
Well, I thought the Prime Minister answered this brilliantly in Prime Minister's Question Times, in Prime Minister's Questions this week, and I fully agree with him.
And so what is your definition of a woman?
As I said, I would exactly agree with what the Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's Question Time.
When we're having a social media or a debate around what genitalia someone's got, I think it really debases the serious issues that people face.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
People are complex, that they are different.
Rod Liddle, people are complex. What do you make of it all?
It's wonderful, isn't it? This is the latest equivalent of the how much is a pint of milk argument, isn't it? These days, that's what we ask politicians. We ask them if they know what a penis is, and we ask them if they know what a woman is. Keir Starmer is unable to tell us what a woman is, and is also seems to be mystified about what a penis, who has penises, who doesn't have penises. And some wags on social media, I see, have been saying he should simply take a quick look in the mirror. It is utterly, utterly bizarre that at a time when there are many serious things happening, this is a news story which is kind of dogging the papers. And you're right in what you say, Dan, that they're scared. I mean, in the Labour Party, they're scared stiff of the left of the party, much as they are indeed in the Green Party. They're both scared of the extremists within their party who totally deny biological reality and scientific fact. And so they cannot say anything other than prevaricate, which is what Sir Keir did, and it's what Angela Rayner did during a fairly lengthy description, actually, of how one should address a transgendered person and whether it was polite to ask them whether they had a penis or not. It's not something I've ever done, Dan, but I do look forward to doing it in future and following Angela's guidelines. Similarly, Rishi Sunak, the question to him, which I thought was absolutely hilarious, that he agrees with the Prime Minister's definition of what a woman is. My worry is that until the Prime Minister had made that definition, Rishi himself was unaware of what a woman is. Someone should have asked him.
That was the most fascinating answer, don't you think, Rod? Because here's a Tory politician, a bloke who fancies himself as Prime Minister, a bloke who, let's be honest, doesn't agree with much of what the Prime Minister has to say, and we've seen that in recent months. He's been prepared to publicly express that, but in this case, he just wouldn't go there. Even a senior Tory would not go there publicly.
No, that's absolutely right. But it's worse than that. And let's not just pick on the politicians, because I read a piece in the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph today. Now, by all accounts, you know, the most right-leaning of Britain's morning national newspapers, I think you can say. And it was covering the cycling story, the story of this transgendered man, the man who was due to take part in a big cycling race in Great Britain and has now been told he can't because he's a man and it's a woman's race. And throughout that piece, he was referred to as a woman, unequivocally. He was referred to as the daughter of another woman. You know, so it's not simply the politicians. It's all of us here who go along with this, and it's the same. You know, it's pretty much the same. When I'm writing for The Sun, I tend to get my genders corrected when I'm writing about transgender issues, and it is bizarre because, of course, it's contrary to reality. And
so Rod, can I just pick you up on that? So this is Emily Bridges, right? And at the top of the show, I said it is absolutely insane to even countenance the idea that Emily Bridges could compete in a female cycling race. So I'm completely with you on that. Yeah. What I'm just interested to know is there anything that Emily Bridges can do, in your view, for you to be happy to refer to her as a woman?
No, it's a matter of chromosomes. It's very, very straightforward. There is a vanishingly small number of people who genuinely are intersex and who genuinely find it difficult to fit into either one of the two sexual characteristics. But that is one in 5 or 10 million. It is a tiny minority.
So Caitlyn Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs about Caitlyn Jenner, apart from to say that I believe that Caitlyn Jenner does not agree with people like Emily taking part. She doesn't. That's about all I know about Caitlyn Jenner. But we have to. Liberal ideology is founded upon a whole bunch of non sequiturs and idiocies. And the only way that they can keep all this afloat is by punishing people who point out that they actually are factually incorrect. And the trouble is, the newspapers, the papers I work for, the papers you work for, have all been scolded in the last 10 years by the pressure groups, whether it be, Stop Funding Hate, whether it be actually the transgender and Stonewall advice to people as to what they're meant to say. And we all follow it. So you do then end up with someone who's a bit thick, like Keir Starmer, simply not being able to explain what a woman is. It is utterly remarkable, Dan. Could I say one more thing on a previous issue?
Of course.
Up here, where I am, in County Durham, in the Pennines, nobody refuses cash, but quite a few still refuse credit cards. So
I love it. Old school.
It's absolutely true that up here you need cash, whereas if I were to go down to London, I wouldn't need any. It's two countries.
I like it. I like it. We want to keep cash. Rod Little, thank you so much. Rod, we'll speak next week. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. My superstar panel are back with me. John, who's your nominee for Greatest Britain?
Greatest Britain, well, it's an easy one this week. It's the Queen. I mean, her performance, effort that she put into honouring the legacy of her husband, everything about it, for those people who are just concentrating on her, not her son, we'll come to him in a moment, I think would have been just grateful that she's still there and still
oh my goodness, I was.
impressive.
And to see her emotion as everyone sung God Save the Queen, it was quite something. Daisy McAndrew, your nominee.
My nominee is somebody you just mentioned a few moments ago, Dan, and that is Jamie Wallis, first MP to come out as transgender. I thought his statement today was really admirable, incredibly brave, quite difficult to read. And I think this will help with policy making, because we'll have somebody who's in the House of Commons who knows what it's like and can say what's a step too far, you know, and can talk as a member of that community. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
Adam Brooks, your nominee.
Mine is a bit of sad news. It's the Wanted's Tom Parker, who sadly passed away today.
Do you know what? I was so devastated about this because I knew Tom pretty well, actually, in my former life, and he was such a great guy. And actually, I was looking through that tweet earlier today, and I just wanted to say to Tom Parker and all of the people who love Tom Parker, you were actually the nicest man in the world, Tom. Such a good human being. I feel devastated for his wife, Kelsey, his kids. To die at that age is just so devastating. But the thing about Tom is he really did live well, and he put a lot into his 30-odd years, and he is today's greatest Britain for sure. But what a sad, sad loss to the entertainment industry. And my heart obviously goes out to his bandmates in The Wanted as well. They just reunited. They managed to do that tour. They brought him up on stage. But you don't get over something like that. It is no age to go, and he battled through his condition with so much strength. And so it was just really sad news today. Union Jackass time. Daisy McAndrew, your nominee.
My Union Jackass is the young man who decided it was a good idea at the Euro final to hurl racist abuse on Twitter to Marcus Rashford. His name is Justin.
Yes, good choice. John, your nominee.
Union Jackass, well, yes, it's got to be Prince Andrew. Appalling performance, pushing himself forward, giving no impression that he was the least bit contrite for the extraordinary amount of damage, dishonour and awfulness of his behaviour.
And Adam Brooks, your nominee.
Mine's the horrible hypocrite Nicola Sturgeon.
Do you know what? That's all you need to say. That's all you need to say. Sturgeon is today's Union Jackass for that revolting example of mask hypocrisy, which proves her COVID rules are all pure theatre. Thank you so much to my superstar panel tonight, John Sargent, Adam Brooks and Daisy McAndrew. I'll be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Thank you so much for your company tonight. Good night.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Rain and snow is currently clearing south across the UK, followed by cold Arctic winds and the risk of icy patches first thing Thursday. This cold front is bringing a marked change, with Arctic air following south and in some places temperatures dropping more than 10 Celsius compared with a few days ago. It's also bringing a mixture of rain and hill snow, with the snow increasingly coming to lower levels across southeast England as it clears during the early hours of Thursday. Don't be surprised in the southeast, particularly if you're somewhere like the Chilterns or the Downs, to wake up to a slushy covering of snow. Won't last long though, and in the north we've already seen some snow and it will continue through the night with some icy patches first thing. A widespread frost to begin the day, temperatures well below freezing for some clearer and more sheltered parts of northern UK, and actually plenty of bright weather first thing once any remaining persistent rain and snow clears away from the far southeast. There'll be further wintry showers, sleet, snow, hail into the east of England, northern and eastern Scotland on a biting northeasterly wind, and it's going to feel cold in that wind. Temperatures at best 6 to 8 Celsius fairly widely. But there'll also be sunny spells away from the showers, particularly in the west. And a heads up, with clearing skies on Thursday evening, a really good chance actually of seeing the aurora, especially if you live in the north. But it's going to be a freezing night under those clear skies. Still some wintry showers into the east first thing Friday, further showers into the northwest as well. But away from those showers, sunshine and temperatures at or below freezing. Soon enough, though,